Hey, what's up, guys? How we doing? Well, look at those faces. How we doing? That's the kind of energy we need, people. I love all the muted screams. I'm sure you're all screaming at home. I believe that. Well, hey, let's take it off. This is ArtSpeak University, October 12th, 2022. My name is Mark Gettis. I serve on the ArtSpeak team as a strategist, but I also lead our video team. And I can tell you a little bit about myself before I jump in. I live in Pennsylvania, or we call it the Annex, with my wife and our daughter. Like I said, I lead our video team. I have an interest in, all things visual arts. I believe it's okay to cheat at Monopoly. And honestly, I find that to be the real game, is getting away with it. And if you don't agree with me, that's okay. Just don't play Monopoly with me. But I want to kick in. Today, we're going to talk about our sermon caption clip process at ArtSpeak. And this is a really great process that, we use for clients, but works great internally. We've trained several of our clients to use this process, and then have totally taken the hands off and said, like, hey, this is a great process that you can take and run with it. I have a question to kick off, and I would like to know, and it's kind of rhetorical, but it's something to ponder on. What is the modern church service, and how can we distill it down to a bite-sized piece to be seen and taken in by someone who has never set foot in the doors of church, or has never encountered the community of believers? Or even more so, what is the modern church service, and how can we distill it down to someone who has more than a negative view of the modern church and does not want to engage because they know what they know from what they've seen or heard or experienced. That's a lot of weight, maybe, to put on like a social media post. So I'm not trying to say that this is a solution to every problem that the church faces. But I think what this process does is it does allow us to give people a window of hope, or a window of something to make their life better in that moment. And so if we look at the modern church service or session, or whatever you want to call it, I think if I can speak in a very non-church word sense, I think we go to about an hour-long combination of a 20-minute rock concert and a 40-minute TED Talk with a couple other pieces in the middle. Is that about accurate? Does that feel about accurate to everyone? Yeah? See some head nodding. I've got to watch the channel here too. So, the music part's tough, because the music part is something that we can't necessarily, post all the time, just based on copyrights and all of that. But if we go to the second half of a church service, and we had a conversation with a church yesterday, and I remember Ryan asking, are you a 40-minute guy, or a 30-minute guy, a 35, 20? Like, what's the landing here for your sermons? Can we take that 35-minute presentation of the gospel, and can we distill it to 30 seconds? The answer is no. I mean, absolutely not. You cannot take someone's articulated, 35, 40-minute sermon and distill it to 30 seconds. But what you can do is you can pick out moments that are the most impactful, and that hopefully exist out of context. And you can package them in a way that is going to reach people, and is going to give people something that they can share on their own personal social media through sharing a post from a church. It's going to give you something that's really accessible. So I don't have to hear a whole 35-minute message to hear the challenge, or to hear the anecdote after point 2 that lives alone out of context. And if you're able to do this, you have a really great weekly cadence that you're able to utilize as a church, or utilize for clients. So you can do this in your church. And I'm going to get really nuts and bolts in a second, but I want to kind of start more in the philosophical space. So at ArtSpeak, we call these sermon caption clips. We call these 30/60 sometimes. And the idea there is they have to live between 30 and 60 seconds. They're good for all social platforms. They're good for Instagram. They're good for Facebook. They're good for TikTok. They're good for, I think they play well on Twitter. We just haven't really used them a ton on Twitter because it's not really so much a video space as the others. And so I'm going to dive in and talk a little bit about just the importance of captions, the importance of that part of the process. And then I'm going to go into actual project file of a recent project that we've done for a church client and talk through exactly how we got to where we got to and what it took to get there and how you can utilize this process yourself if you'd like to. So first off, let's do some stats. This stat is kind of reported every year. And so I kind of averaged the last couple and looked at a couple of different reporting agencies. About 80% of video is watched with the sound off. 85% on Facebook is watched with the sound off. Let's do a little poll here. We can do show of hands, or we can do it in the community channel here. Who like watches Netflix and Disney and Hulu and all of that with captions turned on, with closed captions turned on? If you're in the video, you can just shoot your hands up. Yeah. Okay. Who thinks that is a awful thing that ruins the thing that you're watching and it annoys you to no end? Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. I like the divide. So my thought personally, little sidebar, I do think that it makes everything better unless you're watching comedy. Because if it ruins the punchline, it totally wrecks like any kind of comedy you're watching. If you're watching stand-up or even a comedy series, like the caption will always beat the delivery, and then you've ruined it. But I also will say everything else, man, I have captions on. I have had captions on for years. And I probably understand like 40% more of the dialogue in shows that I watch because I have captions on. So it's become this thing that like it started out years ago as a tool for disability or a tool to be able to watch something without sound on. And now it's become this like norm in our culture, especially on social media, to see a video with captions. And I'm sure you've seen those videos, especially on Instagram, with the words that pop up one at a time and the font size is always changing. Those are auto-generated captions right inside of the app. And they're handy, and you can't really stylize them, a ton, but they're really handy and they're great. And more creators, even they're just posting a talking head reel that they shot on their phone and are posting immediately. More than not, I feel like I'm seeing people utilizing captions because, again, it helps people who can't hear. It helps increase readability or increase how easily we ingest the information. But also people just know like this video is going to perform better and people are actually going to hear what I have to say if they read it. So I think probably unless I'm like sitting on my couch and there's no one else in the room, my phone's probably always on mute. The volume's probably always down. I mean, that's what headphones are for. But like in public, or like if you, who has the awful habit of like doom scrolling before bed? Has anyone fallen prey to that? Yeah, right? Like we all are like, yeah, screen time and no blue light an hour before bed. And like there's all those stats telling us like this is how to fix your brain. And we're all like, but I want to know what's falling apart about the world right before I go and rest my head for sleep. The worst habit that a lot of us have. But cat videos, yeah, Ryan, that's true. And so of course, like sounds off in those moments, you're trying to wind down maybe. But doesn't that make a great case for why these videos should exist? Doesn't that make a great case for how the church can utilize that space? Doesn't that make a really great motivator to say, people are not walking through the door on Sunday morning, but at 11:30 at night, when they're done with their workday and they put the kids to bed and and they're reading the headlines or they're watching the news and they're getting in bed themselves and they're trying to wind down. But we have all of these sources of anxiety coming at us and all of these different things telling us how we should be living our lives. Doesn't it make sense and motivate us to create content from our already existing weekly services that are going to happen no matter what? Church is going to happen on Sunday. Doesn't it make sense to try to utilize as much of that, if we're going to use like an analogy, take as much meat off of that bone and serve it in a way that people can hear and ingest that hope. Ingest is a weird word for that. Sorry, the analogy fell apart at the end. But doesn't it make sense, right? Because I think as ArtSpeak, but also as the church as a whole, I think that our goal is to be reaching people and meeting people where they're at and reaching people when they're in their most vulnerable moments. So, or just throughout the day, right? It doesn't have to be that heavy. The 24-hour church, absolutely, Bria. I'm a huge believer. I think when the pandemic happened, a lot of people had a lot of different opinions about what the church meant. I think that, and you even see it right now in this community, I think that we saw that community had a lot of different definitions. And there's a lot of things that we may have picked up through that learning experience that I think that we can continue to utilize. So the idea of the 24-hour church, like the idea of being a hope factory, the idea of being a place where it's not just 1 hour a week that we're engaging with people. You don't have to shoot secondary content. You don't have to go and set up a studio set or have your pastor or leadership shoot some selfie videos. You already have this thing that they're already wearing a microphone. There's already, energy because they're amped up presenting. And you can just take that and utilize it for a piece of content that can live a lens. So like I said, vast majority, 85%, watching the sound off. Vast majority of people who use captions don't have a hearing impairment. Captions are good for better stats. They have higher share stats, algorithm preferable, SEO friendly, and they're just in general more accessible. So specifically what I'm going to be walking through is how we get to, from the start to the end of a project, we utilize Adobe Premiere. And we call these, like I said, 3060s. So let's go ahead and dive right in to a recent project. I'm going to share my screen and then we'll have that awkward moment where I go, can you hear that? And then someone nods their head. It's going to be great. We're going to have a fun time. So here's awkward moment. Can you all see my screen? Yeah. If I play this, can you hear it? It decides to play. If it decides to play. You can hear it? Yeah? Sweet. Awesome. Kinda, maybe. Maybe it's through my microphone, and that's okay. So this is the end result of one of our recent projects for a church that we've worked with. And this is from a Sunday service. Joe's on the call. Joe, you might be able to say in the chat or in the Slack channel, let me know. I don't know if we picked this clip or if they selected this clip. But if you want to jump in and clarify, you can even unmute your mic, Joe, and just let me know. So I'm just going to play through this clip in its entirety, and we're going to just take a look at it. And then we're going to pick it apart and dissect it and kind of talk about the what and the why.
Jesus taught his disciples, when you pray like this: Father, holy is your name. Worthy is your name. You don't have to do another thing today, God. The sun came up. I woke up. Thank you. Start with gratitude. Never stop praying.
So there were a lot of clips that I could have selected for today. And I actually chose this one just visually, but it's funny because it really lines up with kind of who we are, right? As ArtSpeak and who we are as a community. Start with gratitude. So like that was not intentional. It just worked out that way. So first off, this clip works out of context, right? This clip exists outside of the message and it makes sense, right? He was giving us a challenge. He was inspiring us. It does not need a story or whatever scripture he was referencing for it to work, for the idea that he's trying to get across to work. It wasn't intentional on his part. This was intentional either on our part. or on the church who selected the clips part. But let's take all of it out. Caption, background, timestamp, music, all of it out.
Jesus taught his disciples, when you pray, pray like this: Father, holy is your name. Worthy is your name. You don't have to do another thing today, God. The sun came up, I woke up, thank you. Start with gratitude. Never stop praying.
Totally works. And so not every moment of every sermon is going to work like that. What I've found is that once you really get to know the cadence of a pastor, that's when you really start to develop like the ability to kind of pinpoint, just toss a dart into the timeline of their message and catch it. But even better than that is noting it in real time, right? So if you're sitting in church on a Sunday and you're listening to the message, or maybe you're in a control booth, or maybe you're watching it on a screen somewhere, and you hear something and your ears perk up, or the thing that the kind of things that make you go, that's good, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to pull out the note on my phone, or if you have a pen and paper and you're into the notebook or handwritten notes. If you hear something that makes you think that, that's a really good signifier that someone else is going to get something from that. And then as long as it lives outside of context and works outside of context, it's worth writing down. It's worth turning into a clip. So the easiest way to do that is in the moment, just jot down the time. Because then you can do the math, right? If you take the whole sermon service recording and you actually start on time, you can do some math and just go in and say, okay, if I start on the top of the hour or whatever, I can do the math and I can find that exact moment without having to rewatch the entirety of the sermon again to find the moment. Even better, if you're with your media team at the church, or you're in some kind of control room space and you can see a timestamp on whatever device you're using to stream or to record, however you get your footage afterwards, jot down that time, because then you can just jump into the source footage and go, that's exactly what I need. Some streaming softwares are even now allowing you to create clips so you don't have to download the whole message. If you're a Resi user, which many churches are, or if you're a YouTube streamer, which a lot of churches are, you can now just create subclips and download those. So now you don't have to work with these big, massive files. You can just work with the moment that you identified as, being what you want to utilize. I think probably 2 to 3 of these you can usually find per sermon, unless your speaker or preacher has a really strong cadence that continues to just reference a story. Even if they are referencing a story, if they say a person's name, but the idea of the story that they're telling lives out of context, totally usable. So 30 to 60 seconds. This one landed a little light. I think that they specified they wanted to land a little bit light. So I'm just going to dive in and show you just some of the process of what we do to get to the end of these clips. So first and foremost, we go ahead and we track the speaker. We do that with horizontal keyframing, and I'm not going to show you like under the hood. It sometimes takes time. This guy, actually, I don't think we have any on it. This preacher stayed really at his table, and so that was really helpful. Some people are pacers. If you've ever run a camera for a service, that's a long 30 minutes. And so what we try to do, because we're taking a 16:9 video and reframing it to 9:16 or 4:5 for social, we will go in and actually center crop and track them with keyframing, which you can do in Premiere. You don't have to take it to another app or anything like that. Some social apps are now even allowing you to do face tracking, where you can follow someone and the frame pans with them. And I kind of have a feeling that Premiere is going to be adding that as a feature soon. They're usually like a year or two behind the functions that social media has. So I wouldn't be surprised if that will pop up soon here in one of the Premiere updates. They're already have a couple tools that let you reframe for social without having to do too much work with machine learning. So first and foremost, take the clip, get them lined up center. And then what we use is we utilize the auto captioning feature, which creates a caption track in Premiere. So I believe it's over here. Yep. You can take a clip and you can run that clip through the text captions editor. And you can actually do a process where you, this will say retranscribe. You can transcribe the sequence. It will turn it into text captions. you can go through and fix any typos or any maybe, specific proper nouns. Maybe it's a Bible character, story reference, or maybe it's a name of the church, or maybe it's just a word that kind of more exists in the Christian sphere that Adobe is like, I don't know what that thing is. You can teach your copy of Premiere words that you want it to know so that it can catch, much like your iPhone, will learn how to put certain words into your library. And so once you get that all lined up, you can create a caption track. And the beauty of the caption track is you can do a master style edit. Up until a year and a half ago, Adobe didn't have this feature. So we were making these all with individual titles that took twice as long. When this feature came out, we immediately jumped on the beta because we wanted to try and see what we can do with it. And when you have a whole caption track here, you're able in the track style to select text, manipulate that text, size it, and move it around. And if you've ever worked with titles in Adobe before, you can't do this with a normal title. You have to go one by one individually to edit those title styles, or duplicate and paste text in and make sure you paste the style. And it's a whole headache and a nightmare. But this allows you to create and save text styles for later use. So you have your brand font or a readable font that you like, or even a font that is in your current series because you want to match series art. You can go ahead and add that in and style it out. Moving down the line, I'm going to start from the bottom up now to build the frame. We find a music track that we like, something that fits the cadence and the energy of what's being said. So if it's more reflective, we'll try to find something that's more of that reflective, inspiring space. If it's energetic and inspiring and just makes you want to like get up out of your seat and go like fix your life, then we find a track that fits that energy. So this is
worthy is your name. You don't have to do another.
It's like got some acoustic, a little 4 on the floor. It's just kind of moving us. A key thing to kind of keep in mind is that you're mixing for an iPhone speaker. And sometimes in video, if you're a church video editor, like sound sometimes is like the last thing that we think about. I'm really like adamant about making sure it sounds good, because if people do have their volume on and they are listening, you don't want the music fighting the dialogue. Very easy, handy tool. Jump into an equalizer. This is really nerdy. Jump into an equalizer and just scoop out around 2K. 2K on the spectrum of what we can hear is all of your S's, P's, T's. It's everything that comes out of your nose. It's what makes speech intelligible. And it's going to make your track not sound as good or as full. But you really just kind of want that low end energy anyway. So pull out some 2K, and then you're not doing volume fighting. You keep the energy, but what you're doing is you're carving out space for the voice. So like in design or anything, you can't just keep going more, right? So mixing sound kind of works the same way. You need to carve out space for different things to sit in the same mix. Next up, we have a background. This is a kind of like a grunge pattern texture that we pulled from our library, I believe. It might be from the brand asset guide from the church. Next up is this little logo animation. I believe Joe did this edit, so he created this mask. So he took the logo and postered it around the frame, and then I can jump in and show you. He took the logo. That's the background. Took the logo and posted it into a frame, and then masked it to this white bar that keeps moving. So using an alpha mask. So basically telling the logo to only exist wherever that white bar is, which is really helpful and handy. Again, no After Effects needed. It all exists right here in Premiere. Then of course we have the clip, and I just showed you that. And then we get to this timestamp, which we try to put in all of our sermon caption clips or caption videos or social videos that have a CTA of some kind. Timestamps are a really great way to let someone know how much time they're going to invest in watching this video, which might sound really dumb or menial, but when people are scrolling and you stop their scroll and people are looking for that next dopamine hit on the next scroll of whatever they're watching, which is the real brain science of how social media works, you're letting them know you're not going to be here that long. Like, stick with us, right? Stay tuned. We'll be back for more, right? This is the modern version of that. We're also doing something, we're tapping into what's called the sunken cost fallacy. The sunken cost fallacy is the lie that we all tell ourselves when we're started on a project and we we could maybe back out, but we say, well, I'm already in this far. I might as well complete whatever I'm doing. It's the reason why people overspend on building a deck off the back of their house. It's the sunken cost fallacy. Oh, I already bought the lumber. Still don't know what I'm doing, but might as well finish it out now, right? So we add these timestamps, and these are timestamps that we actually created in-house, but they can be done very easily with some animation tools. Again, all in Premiere if you need to. You've seen these sometimes probably on social media as a border that fills up, or a circle that fills up, or a line. So Joe actually created several of these that we just kind of have and can recolor and retime. And we start it. People know, like when the bar reaches the end, that's the end of the video. That's all we need you here for. And it's part courtesy, part brain science, but it's something that we try to add to every video. And then a caption texture. This piece is just a background that's going to make the caption pop. So we duplicated the background texture, masked it off, and it's just going to make that caption pop off of the video for text readability. And that's it. That's the whole caption clip. So some of this is style choice. This in particular, just use the generic church brand guide. A lot of times what we like to do is we like to get the art files for a sermon series. If we want to match the cadence of the social feed and at the time, get those art files, break them into a background and a foreground, and you don't have to do much. Just make it move around a little bit. Or if the graphic for your sermon series has water in the background, find a similar looking water looping stock video that you can replace it with for the background of the video, just to make it a little bit more dynamic, but keep it on brand. So this in particular was generic to the church brand, but you can really style these out if you want to match series, or to match maybe if you have a seasonal brand look or something like that you want to just continue to keep it fresh. So that's the entire process to create a sermon caption clip, and some of the why behind it. I have talked a lot, and I'd love to know if you have any questions. And I have the Slack up, so if maybe Andrew, if there are any questions that you want to field, if anything popped in that I missed, because I didn't have it up the whole time.
One visual question for you, Mark.
Yeah.
How do you guys handle like safe zones for different screen sizes when it comes to clips?
Oh yeah, great question. We actually have a safe zone guide. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and share it in the community. And maybe if we can link it to this video, if there's a resource, a way I can. So it's just a PNG. You can create guides in Premiere. We just have a PNG file. And it actually, what we do is we have a template project folder that has like all of our file structures, because Premiere, doesn't want you to move anything around once you've added it. And in that template folder, I have a PNG, and it's going to show you 4x5, 9:16, and then it's a 9:16 file. So it's going to sit right on top of a 9:16 video. So it'll show you 4x5 crop, but it will also show you the current user interface overlays for Instagram and for TikTok. So like TikTok's pretty invasive, right? There's all those buttons on the side. There's a bunch of text on the bottom. Instagram's not as invasive, but it's getting there. So it kind of red boxes out. And we just like put that on the top layer and then make sure we turn it off, obviously, before we export. But that's a great question. And I don't believe that guide is in this project file, and I don't want to, pull it in and show you, but I absolutely would love to link it to this if we can. Great question. Anything else?
I think people are interested in hearing more about audio, if you can speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me give you the super hyper condensed version. So I was a recording arts major in college, and I love music and mixing, and I'm a nerd for that. So let me boil it down very quickly. As people, we hear from about 18 to 18 hertz, or 20 to 20. As you get older, that top end drops off a little bit, but from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, or 20 to 18 safely. And then the human voice starts around 100 hertz, maybe 70, and goes up till, all that's like the high end frequencies of the way our mouth, makes sound, goes up to that even like 10K or 10,000 hertz. So the human voice is a pretty wide range in how we hear. And when I say to scoop out 2K, and I'll share my screen one more time because I can show you probably better than I can tell you. So when I say to scoop out 2K, I'm specifically, so this is, if you look at this chart right here, at the bottom left, this is, I'll move it to, this is 20 hertz right here. This is the low end of the frequency. It's laid out horizontally. And this is 30. It goes up to 30 in Premiere, to 20. So sometimes like 10K, people will describe as like air. It's like the crispy stuff. You know, if you listen to a song and hear a lot of the hi-hats, that's 10K. So when I say to scoop 2K, it's a very broad generalization. But essentially what I'm saying to do is all of the sound that a voice makes that makes it a voice, and not just like tones, but like the consonants, right? Make our speech, split up the vowels and make our speech intelligible, make us able to understand one another. I'm saying to remove that from the music bed underneath the vocal. Because if you remove that, you're creating space for that vocal to not have to fight whatever's in the track. In this case, an acoustic guitar. Or have you ever been in the end of church and it's like the pads come up and the keys are great and it sounds awesome, but it's like all of a sudden, it's not that necessarily that it's too loud, it's just fighting. Like it's making it harder to hear. So this is a great practice too. Like when, you know, people use when mixing a band, they'll pull out certain things so that the vocal can, you know, be out on front so we can all hear the words and sing along together, especially in a church context. So this is a really kind of a cheap trick. We have I don't think Joe used it. I think he just grabbed and pulled. So I have a preset for Premiere EQs we call it track magic, because that's kind of what it does. It's just this magic thing. You slide onto the track and it just suddenly makes it better for talking. And I also don't mind, we can share that as well in the community, because I think it'd be a great resource. If you don't feel comfortable as an audio person, you're like, I can cut video, this is kind of out of my realm. Track magic is kind of like the easy way to like add it on, and it will just help your vocal to get, you know, back on top. It's the art of, instead of adding more voice, taking away what is fighting voice. Make sense? Cool. Well, guys, I think we are at or over time, so I appreciate it. Like I said, this is not the absolute solution, but I think it's a really great avenue to help bring portions of what we do on a Sunday, or portions of how we communicate to people, and bring it to platforms where people are that would, quite honestly, probably never step foot inside of the local church. So I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the Slack channel. Thanks.
Fantastic, Mark. Thank you so much. I'm ready to sign up for the full course.
Right.
So awesome.